What's up, guys? Back with another video. I've just been so busy working on CAD stuff for my angle gear replacement, which I'm going to be making a video about probably after this video or the next one. But I kind of want to do a little different video today, more of a whiteboard kind of analysis, like math kind of video on the P80 viscous coupler all-wheel drive based system. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into that, and I'm basically going to be explaining a couple different parts. And I will show those right now. So I want to take a look at the layout of the Volvo all-wheel drive system, explain how the gearbox ratio multiplier concept with the transmission makes it difficult to create a strong cast angle gear because it's coupled to the final drive, explain basically the strength of the front axles, the prop shaft, the viscous coupler and freewheel mechanism, the rear axles and the rear diff. So I basically just want to do a whole rundown of the system and basically my analysis on, what's weak and what's strong. So let's get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about in this video is the P80 viscous coupler all-wheel drive system, how it functions, and the basic layout of the system. So we have our engine, and our engine is connected directly to the gearbox via the clutch, and the angle gear is also directly connected to the gearbox's final drive. It is a one-to-one connection. The output of the gearbox spins the exact same speed as the angle drive and vice versa. And we also have our front differential inside of our gearbox, just like a front wheel drive car. And the passenger side axle actually passes through the angle drive into the front differential inside of the gearbox. So the passenger side axle is not actually coupled or connected to the angle drive at all. The angle drive is simply used for just sending torque to the rear. It actually passes through the gearbox to the front diff, like I said earlier, and it works the exact same way as a front wheel drive based car. We also have our driver's side axle over here going into the front diff of our gearbox as well. And you can imagine that if the angle drive was just deleted, the system would basically work exactly like a front wheel drive car. So the torque is transferred from the final drive of the gearbox into the angle drive, which is coupled one-to-one. And there's a 3.31 ratio in here. So this actually steps down the torque 3.31 times, and it increases the speed by 3.31. So this is actually beneficial because the prop shaft is actually seeing 3.31 times less torque than the front wheels. So that helps kind of save our prop shaft from being all torn up from putting a ton of torque through the system. And this prop shaft is connected to the angle drive and the viscous coupler via companion flanges, and there's also a center carrier bearing in the center of the car that basically supports the shaft. So now moving on, we have a 3.131 ratio, stepping down the torque, increasing the speed. First place the torque hits after the angle drive is the viscous coupler. And what this viscous coupler does is allow different amounts of torque to be transferred from the front to the rear. And how it works is we have this box right here with these two shafts that are basically inside of each other. Here I'm showing them offset, but they're not actually offset. And we have these plates that are every other between the two shafts, and there's a viscous fluid in here. I think it's a silicone-based type fluid in the Volvo ones. Basically what happens is we have our input torque here, and when our input shaft into the viscous coupler starts spinning faster, it'll heat up the fluid, faster from if there is traction losses at the front. It'll heat up our fluid and basically cause the input and the output to lock 50-50. And this will cause torque to be sent to the rear wheels. Now in this case, it can be anywhere from basically 0 to 100%. So when the viscous coupler does lock, if the front wheels were to completely lose traction, you could have 100% sent to the rear. But if the front wheels weren't completely to lose traction, you could have maybe only 50% sent to the rear. So that is one thing to keep in mind when designing a uprated angle gear, is you have to account for the fact that 100% torque can be sent to the rear at any time if the front does completely lose traction. So now that the torque is going through the viscous coupler unit, it goes through the freewheel mechanism unit. When you're going forward, that freewheel mechanism unit doesn't do anything except couple the viscous coupler to the rear diff. When you are on decel, the freewheel mechanism won't allow torque to be transferred from the rear to the front. So torque can only ever go from the front to the rear. After our freewheel mechanism, we go right into the rear diff, where the torque is multiplied by 3.31 times and the speed is decreased by 3.31 times, and then power is sent to the rear wheels. The P80 all-wheel drive is actually a 1050 rear end, which is a derivative of the 1045 and 1065 used in the 900 series. So it does actually have a Dana 30 locker. So below speeds of 25 miles an hour, the two rear wheels can completely lock up, where torque is going to be split between the two evenly. And it is possible to also do a mod on that to always have basically always have it lock up above speeds of 25 miles an hour if one wheel were to start spinning faster than the other. And there's also a couple other things that we can do to this rear diff to make it a little bit stronger, such as putting a real wave track differential in it and putting some beefier axles in it. But it is pretty strong as it comes, as it is out of basically a derivative from the 900 series, which a lot of people here in America put V8s in them and they can handle the torque pretty well. So now that we basically have a whole overview of the system, I'm going to start talking a little bit about the gearbox ratio multiplier and how that can affect things. Angle gear removed, I can't exactly show it with everything together, but this is going to give a better representation of it with it removed. So we have our collar sleeve, which directly couples our final drive. So basically directly couples the differential to the actual angle gear right here. And here you can see how our passenger side axle actually passes through the angle gear. And look, this spins independently. This does not, the angle gear does not provide any torque to this passenger side axle. This passes through and then goes right into the front differential. And this side is the same as front wheel drive, goes directly into the transmission and into the front diff. And then I don't have a drive shaft or a prop shaft on here, but torque will be sent down through here into the input. This is the viscous coupler. This is the freewheel mechanism. This is the rear differential. And you can see we have our rear axles. So that is how the entire system functions, and a quick overview of all the different components inside of it. The next thing I want to talk about is gearboxes and how they are torque multipliers. So like I said earlier, our angle drive is coupled directly to the final drive of our gearbox. So we're going to be talking about the M66 gearbox, which is the gearbox I plan on using. It's out of the S60Rs. And in America, the final drive is usually 3.77. And here we can see we have gears 1 through 6. First gear has a 3.38 ratio, second gear has a 2.05 ratio, and so on. So what we want to do is we want to be able to figure out how that torque is actually multiplied from the engine output. So in order to do that, we basically take the gear ratio and multiply it by the final drive, and then we multiply the result of that by the engine torque to get how much torque is actually coming out of the gearbox. So in this case, in first gear, we have a total ratio of 12.74. So if we were to be making, let's say we want to design an angle drive to support 1,000 Newton meters of engine torque with 100% power going to the rear, it would need to be able to handle an input of 12,740 Newton meters. Because that engine torque is multiplied by 12.74. That is a lot of torque right there. 12,740 Newton meters. And let's multiply second out. We can see we got 7,720 Newton meters, which is almost half. And it's starting to become apparent why these angle drives are so weak in the lower gears, because the torque multiplication is absolutely crazy. Volvo coupled it to the final drive, which makes basically what the front wheels are seeing, the angle drive's also seeing. So as you can see, as we go in the higher gears, the torque is actually multiplied by less, and instead the wheel speed is actually multiplied by more. So that's why a higher gear you go faster, but have lower torque, and a lower gear you go slower, but have a lot more torque. And let's say third gear, 5,390 Newton meters. You know, things are starting to become a little bit more reasonable as we go higher up in the gears. And my analysis is that this is why these angle drives are so weak, because it's just a very porous cast case, and they blow up in first and second gear because you have a crazy amount of torque going through them. If you completely lose traction in the front and have 100% power or torque going to the rear, you could have up to 12,000 Newton meters going through that angle gear. And that creates incredible stresses on both the pinion bearings and also the ring gear bearings. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that after this. I'll show you where those forces actually are And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I have another video coming up of the angle drive that I've put together myself and how it addresses a lot of those weaknesses in the stock case. But I did want to basically bring this up. This is why these units fail, because there's such a crazy amount of torque going through the input of them. Now it does help that this does have a step down ratio of 3.31. So really it's only the input ring gear that is seeing all that torque. Once the torque gets to the pinion area, it's already been stepped down by 3.31. So the pinion output, sees 3.31 times less. So, more like 4,000 or so Newton meters or whatever. But I wanted to make that very clear about how that torque multiplier in the gearbox affects these angle drives so much. So we'll do a quick little explanation of how basically torque goes through here, all the different bearings and whatnot. I don't have one taken apart because I'll be showing that in my other video. Basically, torque goes into the ring gear input here, and that spins the ring gear. There is a bearing here and a bearing here supporting the ring gear shaft. And then there's also the pinion shaft right here, and there's a bearing here and a bearing here supporting that shaft. And then obviously the gears mesh in the middle. And when those gears do mesh, they create gear tooth forces. And based upon the distance between those gear tooth forces and the bearings, there are different bearing loads on the bearings based upon how far away they are from the gear tooth forces. But basically, we have our inner pinion bearing here, and the force is actually going up. And we have our outer pinion bearing here, and the force there is actually going down. So that's why a lot of times, and I'll insert some photos here of these blown up units, you see this case completely blow off because the biggest force in the angle drive is this inner pinion right here. It is insane how much that force can become when you got a lot of torque going there. So when you have 1,000 Newton meters of torque going through this thing, engine torque that is, that's been multiplied, so it's 12,000 Newton meters like we said earlier in first gear. This inner pinion bearing is seeing about 450,000 newtons of force. And this outer one is seeing about 200,000 newtons of force going down. And so basically on launches or rolls in those lower gears, that can cause this entire top to just blow off, and which will cause the pinion to come out and basically wreck havoc. And we also have forces. We have a force on this ring gear bearing that's going down, and the force on the ring gear bearing here is also going down. And we also have our thrust forces. So in this case on the pinion, the thrust force is going that way, and on the ring gear, the thrust force is going that way. The thrust force really isn't that bad on these. It doesn't really cause the failure, but it's these two pinion bearing forces that are just crazy that cause the entire thing to blow off. And again, in my next video, when I show my billet angle gear case I designed, I will go over all the, the math and everything and how I figured all this out. Next thing I want to talk about are the front axles. They're basically the same as the front wheel drive axles with the exception of the passenger side axle, which is a little bit thinner on the shaft that goes through the angle gear because it has to go through the angle gear. Other than that, the driver's side is the same, and also the splines are the same on both the diff side and the wheel bearing side. We know the 850 front wheel drive axles can handle a lot of torque. There have been plenty of cars in Sweden launching these things on the drag strip with slicks and whatnot, running 10-second passes. People putting 700-800 horsepower through them like myself. I've never had a problem with the OEM axles. Launching them in the street, I've launched them on the track a couple times back when I had was running a lot lower boost a couple years ago, and I never had issues with them snapping. And they shouldn't be an issue during the all-wheel drive swap because the front axles, basically, we know they can handle 100% of the torque coming out of the gearbox because they work fine at front-wheel drive. So with the all-wheel drive, since the angle gear is going to be sending some of the torque to the rear, we're never actually going to see, we might never actually see always 100% of the torque going through these. We might only ever see a maximum of 50% torque or 75% torque or something. So we know that these are going to be strong when launching. Even if we do lock the viscous coupler unit and go full 50-50, we're only ever going to see a maximum of, I guess, potentially 50 to 100% going through these, which really isn't that bad. And we know they can handle 100%. So they should be able to handle 50% no problem. So I'm not too concerned about the front axles. They've always held up for me. They've held up for others. I don't really think that's an area we have to address when trying to put, you know, big power, big torque down through these and launch them on a prep surface. Now I want to talk about the prop shaft analysis. Like we said earlier, the angle gear actually steps down the torque going through the prop shaft by 3.31 times. So it's really not seeing a whole lot of torque. So we'll see if this thing can hold up to, you know, heavy launches, assuming we have an angle gear case that can handle it and a 50-50 locked viscous coupler. This should be pretty easy to get like a new one made, a much stronger one made. Drive shafts are very common. There's plenty of shops everywhere that'll be able to create a stronger prop shaft. So even if this one doesn't hold up, I'm really not concerned about building a stronger one. I think it's going to be a very straightforward process. And basically all they would have to do is they could use the same companion flanges, the same CV joints. They would just have to create a stronger like tube material or use a stronger tube material. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think the prop shaft isn't really going to have too many issues. I know a lot of them fail because either the carrier bearing goes or the CV goes, but I've never really seen one fail from pure torque. They usually fail from mileage and abuse and whatnot. So I think this is going to be fine. I don't think we'll have too many issues there, and if we do, they're going to be pretty easy to address. So the viscous coupler and freewheel mechanism unit are known to break on high torque usage. Basically, the viscous coupler will break internally. What you can do is you can actually weld the viscous coupler so that it'll stay locked full-time 50-50, but then usually the freewheel mechanism will break and then you won't be able to get any torque sent to the rear. So what I plan on doing is, I don't think I'm going to weld the viscous coupler, and I don't really think I'm going to use the viscous coupler either. What I'm probably going to do is either extend the drive shaft so that it fits directly onto the rear diff, or I'm going to create a shaft with the companion flange spline that I can basically just bolt in place of the viscous coupler freewheel mechanism unit. That's going to give me a locked 50-50 system where the front wheels and the rear wheels are always going to turn at the same speed. Now that's definitely not optimal for a daily driver situation, because if you get the front wheels spinning faster than the rear wheels or vice versa, you can run into a combination of torque steer and fishtail, and things can get kind of weird. And also when turning, you know, you could have wheel skipping in the rear and the front, and it might not be the easiest on the drivetrain. But again, I don't really daily drive this car. It's more of a race car. So I think I'm probably going to end up locking it full-time 50-50, which I think is going to give me the best results. Also with the viscous coupler, I think what might be happening also that could maybe cause the angle gear to get damaged is when the viscous coupler does heat up enough after a launch, you know, this happens pretty quickly, probably within like a half a second or so to a second, it might create a really large shock in the drivetrain because it'll instantly lock 50-50. And that might create a really large shock up in the angle gear that might, you know, break some stuff. So I think by eliminating that, I could probably eliminate that drivetrain shock and basically just preload the drivetrain before launch like you should. And that'll basically pick up all the slack in the drivetrain to help keep things together. Here's how I plan on deleting the viscous coupler unit. So this flange going into the rear diff is actually the same as this flange and the prop shaft flange. So basically all I'd have to do is cut away this material right here so that now it's all open in the bottom. And then I would basically remove this out. I could leave this here so it's actually still supported. And the drive shaft, I would just have to extend to here. And that would completely eliminate the viscous coupler and make the system locked 50-50 full time, without having to create some sort of shaft in between that these two companion flanges bolt up to or whatever. I think this one actually doesn't even have a spline on here, so I would have to basically, I guess, create some sort of flange like that. But I think that's my best option, is just to remove this material here and just extend the drive shaft all the way through to the rear diff. Final thing I want to talk about in this video is the rear differential and the rear axles. So like I said earlier, the rear differential housing and basically the differential itself are a derivative of the Volvo 1065 and 1045, which were found in the Mark II and Mark I 900 series respectively, and they're pretty damn strong. I know the diff's pretty strong, and I know the axles are pretty strong from some V8 swapped 900s and people, you know, turboing them and sticking with the rear end. If we can get the rear diff to handle, let's say 500 Newton meters of engine torque, that should be plenty to keep that thing together, because there are situations where you could get 100% torque transfer to the rear, you know, if the front wheels were to lift or to really lose traction. But I think aiming for 50% at the front, 50% at the rear should help keep that together. And that's going to be best achieved by basically making sure we don't lose traction in the front. Or if we do lose traction, we lose traction on all four wheels. But I think I have a couple options if I do want to upgrade this. I could switch to a Volvo, I guess it's a 1031, 1041 wave track differential. The only difference is that's a 27 spline differential, where the 900 series is a 26 spline differential. So basically what I could do is, there are a few companies that sell adapter flanges that would adapt from the 26 to the 27. So basically this flange, the 900 series axles actually aren't like one big piece. They actually have a flange that goes into the differential, and then the CV bolts onto that flange that goes into the differential. So I could use that flange that converts from the 26 to the 27 spline, and then I can actually use BMW 330 axles, which are very, very meaty axles. The only thing I would really have to adapt is the wheel bearing side. I haven't really looked a lot into that, but that is possible to do. Or I could just stick with the Volvo axles and see how those go. And basically just, instead of using the all-wheel drive axles, I'd pull a set of axles out of a Mark 1 900 series and use that with the adapter spline companion flanges, and that all should work pretty well. And that way I can use a real legit wave track diff instead of, you know, welding the flapper on the Dana 30 locker diff to have it lock above, you know, 25 miles an hour. So I got a couple options there. I'm probably gonna leave it stock for the beginning. I'm probably just gonna rebuild the rear, put all new bearings in it, reseal it, and see what we can do. Because those adapter flanges are kind of hard to get. They're not usually in stock. So, or I'll try making my own in CAD and then getting them sent out to get machined, but that's more time. So we'll see what we're gonna do here. The rear end doesn't look too hard to pull out. So even if I do have to pull out the rear in the future to replace all that stuff, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. So these are the rear axles. They're pretty big actually. They're not much smaller than the front. The only issue is I can't find CV boots for them. Somebody who commented on my last video said they couldn't find them either, and you can't buy these new. So I might try and source a used set. A couple of these are cracked. I mean, they're not too bad. There's a couple spots where they're cracked. I might try and source either new ones of these, maybe someone has leftover stock somewhere, try and find these boots, or maybe do the BMW axle swap I talked about, because everything over here I can make work. I would just have to adapt a new wheel bearing maybe, and then also a new wheel bearing and a new hub, and then I guess get adapters to convert from the BMW bolt pattern to the Volvo. Or maybe I could just design my own in CAD and make it all work by using the BMW wheel bearing with the Volvo bolt pattern. I think I would be able to do that. We'll see. I don't know. This is all cool stuff that I can design and, hopefully offer to you guys through my company, and hopefully start getting some really fast P80 all-wheel drives. But yeah, you can see this needs a reseal and a rebuild real badly. I also bought new stay bars here. I'm working on getting new upper control arms. My lowers are all good. None of them's cracked, but I think my next video is going to be pulling this down. Shouldn't be too big of a job. Since it's a donor car, I'm probably going to just cut, the parking brake cables, cut the brake lines, cut a lot of the fuel lines. So all that stuff I don't really need, and cut a lot of the electronics and just pull the exhaust, cut the exhaust out and try and get this thing down as quickly as possible, because there's a lot of stuff I don't really need to use. And then we can start looking into probably making new versions of these brackets. They look kind of rusty, but maybe I can reuse them. And then we also have to create a jig to actually be able to transfer the bolt pattern over to that car. That'll be next video, or the video after, depending on when I do my video about the angle gear. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was a little bit different than my other ones. It was more of a talking kind of math video and analysis video, but I want to start showing more behind the scenes stuff of kind of my thinking and what I plan on doing with this swap, and how I plan on making it as strong as possible so that I can actually, launch it on the track with radials or slicks or something, and not just be breaking stuff every single time. So till the next video, guys, I'm probably going to be releasing a video about my angle gear project. my angle gear case project, or I'm going to be doing a video about the rear subframe drop. But I'm going to try and start pushing out more content on this swap because it's starting to get late, and I want to get this thing done and I want to get this thing running, even if it's only on the stock all-wheel drive stuff, or even if it's just with the all-wheel drive subframe and no angle gear and no prop shaft yet, and still the front wheel drive stuff, and get it moving, get it driving, and then we can, you know, drop the front subframe, swap in the M66 transmission, either my billet angle gear case or my a stock angle gear case for now, but we'll see. I'm very close in the billet angle gear case, and I can't wait to show what I've been working on with that and some of the results. So until next video, guys.